The Pit Press Podcast.
Reinholz launches from downtown. No. Van Horn, no. And that's it. New Mexico with it.
Some big-time games and shots. How about this? Where have you been? MC knocking him down twice. Looking top and keeping it alive. House from knee. Got it. This kid is amazing. This is what got them in trouble. That ball screen giving up the mid-range. Look at this foul. House again. It's topping. Fifth assist.
And New Mexico's going to dribble out the clock. The Lobos three-peat as conference tournament champions Kendall Williams fires the ball into the air, but New Mexico wins it this afternoon 64-58 over San Diego State, and the Lobos claim the Mountain West Conference's automatic bid into the NCAA tournament.
Hey, hey!
Hey, hey. My name is Ryan Tamori. Welcome to another episode of the Pit Press Podcast, probably a very somber one. For those of you that really dislike me on the interwebs, I feel better. I have my voice back. Was going to make a joke there, going to refrain from it because it's probably PG-13. We have a lot to talk about. I don't know where to start with the topics. I mean, I do, but let me get to the gang, the panel, as we normally do. I will start out with my co-founder, my business partner with our parent company, which is New Mexico Alumni Media. That is under the umbrella. That is the Pit Press. That is under the umbrella, Mr. Eric Moulton. Hey, man, how are you doing?
Hey, Ryan. Doing good. Good morning, guys. Yeah, a little somber this morning. Disappointed, but I thought the Lobos actually played a pretty efficient game. Was just one possession short of coming out with that one. But now we look ahead to the Mountain West Tournament and talk about what the Lobos need to do to get in the big dance.
You can follow him on. There's no. What is it? There's no moral victories. You can follow him on Twitter at NM Sportscapper. Anything you need to know about the UFC. O'Malley won, right?
He did. Yep.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know everything about UFC. You're the one who's kind of got into it. And as Rick and I joked, we would say we love this brutal shit. I would just love him because his hair. So I guess it was a really good card last night. But anyway, you can follow him at NM Sportscapper. His name is Mr. Jacob Neff. If you need to know anything about baseball, baseball prospect, college basketball, mid-major, Indiana State at 1:30, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. What's his first name? Goodness, Avila.
Robbie
Avila, yeah. Indiana State takes on Drake. The Missouri Valley Conference has been very exciting. We don't want to talk about Belmont and Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa kind of showed up for a little bit in the conference tournament, but March Madness is in full swing. It's still exciting for you and I. But Jacob Neff, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I had to balance my my watching duty between UNM and UFC last night, but ultimately it was a pretty entertaining night. Just like Eric said, fell short by one possession. But yeah, we'll get into it and talk about it.
And he's been a Lobo fan since 1970. He is the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs. I said that right? Yeah, Western New Mexico Mustangs. The Western New Mexico University. He's been a Lobo fan since 1970. He's also a play-by-play broadcaster for ProView Network. Couldn't spit that out. ProView Network's state championship. We are at the Pit. Mr. Ed Nunez, he will be there broadcasting some games. How are you?
You know what? Real good for you Pius guys, Rick and Ryan. Pius and Academy Egg McMuffin game on Wednesday, Rick. My son and I have that game. So Damian Segura would always talk about that Egg McMuffin game, and it's against your bitter rival. Now I tell my son, you better be down the line, man. We can't be too homerism here. So looking forward to that. I got several other matchups this week as well. And, just finished up a 3-game softball series. I got to say this real quick. First softball game on Friday went 1 minute and 50 1 hour, 50 minutes. The second game under 3 hours. Brutal. The second game was like it never ended, man. And yesterday, Western New Mexico was shut out on a no-hitter, so we got out of there in an hour and 40 minutes, man. So that was my weekend, and and then we got back to the airport and got back in time to watch the Lobos last night. And like Eric said, you know what? They played well enough to win. So, but a little disappointed at the end.
One of my favorite things to do when I was at the Dare Lobo, there's one reference, Ed, to my college reporting days, was covering Ray Birmingham and the UNM baseball team. It was awesome. They were good. They were getting into the NCAA tournament when they had expanded the field to similar to what college basketball is, and it was a round robin team of 64. Ray Birmingham is the man. I've efforted to try to get him on my radio show and on here. But when you mention that, I think of one game in 2011. I covered TCU at UNM at Ice. They were playing at Isotopes Park while they were doing whatever they were doing at Santa Ana Star Field, and TCU jumped on UNM in the top of the first, like 20-0. That one inning took like an hour, and the game started at 4. And I had a deadline. Like it did. There was no. We kind of were like, we got to scrap it. They got blown out. So I've been there, and then when I've worked at the Isotopes, and Eric knows, man, sometimes before that pitch clock, not to go off on a tangent here, the game would start at 6:35 and you're in the 8th at like 9:45, 9:50. It was terrible. But anyway, to the Bay Area, Richard, a 2-time offensive lineman for Mr. San Juan Mendoza and played for Damian Segura, which I love that Egg McMuffin game saying. His name is Richard Thompson. Senor, how are you?
I'm doing well. Glad you're back joining Tamari and leading the crew here. And unfortunately, I did have to play a 8 a.m. game in the pit, which was when they only allowed 8 teams in the tournament. So I'm lucky that we got in, and I'm just happy to talk basketball with you guys this morning. Let's get it going.
I appreciate that segue. Here we go. I don't know where to begin, so here we go.
Ball screen. It's Brown. Osibor down low. 3 to shoot. Osibor out to Brown. The senior for 3. Darius Brown with the dagger. Are you serious? 3.4 seconds left. Utah State leads by 3. Cold as ice. What a smart play by Osibor. Darius Brown, the leader, unquestioned leader of Utah State, makes the huge 3. I need some oxygen, Jordan Kent. This game has been insane. Utah State.
Should have queued up Heath Ledger and from The Dark Knight. Are you serious? I got to quote that. Thanks to CBS Sports Network for that. I got to quote the guy that called the Air Force UNM game, because that shot, not only at the end of the game, at the end of the shot clock for Darius Brown, but here you go. I'm going to go. I'll probably start with Ed, and then I'll give my thoughts not only on that game, because I'm feeling kind of frisky, and my thoughts on the season. But Ed, I'll start with you and just your thoughts on how this team and this game played out. And then the Jamal Mashburn Jr. narrative we'll get into. Ed, the ball is in your court.
Well, I thought at the end there, the Osabar got the ball deep in a House, and Patino said this in the paper this morning. They wanted to dig. House dug. He didn't get back in time, but he said this. Brown hit an NBA 3-pointer. He's made 2 of those, 3 of those this season. I'm sure House was aware of that. He tried to dig in quick on Osabar. Osabar had 21 and 12, and Brown made a tremendous shot. So that was disappointing, But I don't know that when the game is on the line like that, it's easy to question, why did you do that? But in the heat of the battle, I could see I looked at the replay a couple of times. He's trying to dig and then get back, and he didn't. But Brown, to his credit, if you look at the contest on the shot, House had his hand right there, and he made a great shot. He did, and I thought it was the game New Mexico. Look at Joseph, 13 and 10. Toppin had 14, only 3 rebounds, but he dominated at points down low. Dant 17, 5 and 3. House 15, 9 rebounds for House. and 6 assists. I thought there was some times I thought instead of the way he shot the previous game, which wasn't on, against Fresno State, he didn't shoot well. I thought he shot a lot better last night. Got down low in a crouch crossover, got space, shot the ball pretty well, I thought, and stole the ball a couple of times. I thought he played a better game. I really did. They didn't have MASH. I looked at what True was going to give us off the bench. He didn't give us much. He did not give us much, and some of the shots he took were not, frankly speaking, fundamentally sound. They weren't. He's trying to force some stuff. But Amzil, on the other hand, we had talked about Amzil in a shooting slump. This guy got hot, and all of a sudden, a shooter that remembers shooting with confidence. He even showed a little bit of dominance on the block with a little pull-through drop step move that I hadn't seen. So I thought he played very well. Baker had some moments. Dant, these usual moments, he turned the ball over a couple of times in some situations that I thought hurt UNM. But it was a game, Osabar in the first half, and I think he drew fouls. He draws contact. He's one of the best in the conference at doing that. He split some double teams that he took angles that I'm like, they have him doubled, but he went right through he took good angles to the basket and finished. And so Brown with 19, 9, and 6, false left at 10 points. And Martinez attacked and slashed in key moments, came down and threw down a nasty dunk when, they needed it. So, I thought it was a game that UNM definitely could have won and maybe should have won. That last possession, we talked about it. If it doesn't hit the rim, when House threw it off the board, it's a dead ball, automatically dead ball. And then it goes out. Utah State gets a ball in with UNM with no timeouts left, would have had to foul or try to steal it. And, can't blame it on that. But they didn't get a chance to do that. That was not a good sequence of events for those officials at the end of the game. I don't know what happened in the rest, fans come on the floor. So, but I thought it was a game that New Mexico definitely had a chance. I thought they played well enough to win. I was kind of hyped up about it. There was moments I was like, yes, that's the way they've been playing when they were winning. But a game that, again, they could have won. Give Utah State credit. They made the plays at the end to finish.
Here, you can't see it. Here's the ending with the missed Jalen House free throw that just went right off the backboard. And I'll ask you guys this. I thought it happened so fast. And, again, I didn't play the game. I like watching on it. I like betting on it. College basketball has crept into, there's baseball and college football, 1A, 1B for me. And then there's college basketball. And I think nothing beats the tournament. But even and I covered college basketball extensively for 3 years. There might've been some rule changes, but as far as what I saw, I thought it was a dead ball, and I thought that the ball goes back to UNM in that situation. I could be wrong, but here's this play. I don't know if it does any justice. And then the fans storming the court. The game wasn't over, so I think technically that's a technical foul, and it probably should have been 2 shots to UNM. I watched the video. I watched the ending again here, and I was looking for Patino, and people had said that he was looking for the officials. I was on the Mountain West's YouTube page, and it was just a you can't really see. You just see the fans rushing the court. And side note, I would love to see a game at the D. Glenn Smith Spectrum. It looks rather cool. They call it Spectrum Magic, and you got Hilton Magic in Ames, Iowa. But here's this ending.
Oh, he didn't hit the rim. He didn't hit the rim. He didn't hit the rim. Clock winding down. Pass goes Utah State wins their first ever Mountain West Conference regular season title.
And we'll also get into Danny Sprinkle and the job he did there. His time in Logan might be winding down. That play at the end, the players are just walking around and nobody seems to know what's going on. Eric, I'm going to throw it to you and just your general thoughts.
Well, on the free throw specifically, not hitting the backboard, it didn't matter. It wasn't to change the outcome of the game. He needed to hit the rim, first of all, for it to be a live ball and just create the chance for them to get the ball back and get a bucket. But dead ball, Utah State would have gotten the ball, probably knocked down some free throws. It would have been a Hail Mary chance for UNM to tie the game. But overall thoughts on the game was I thought the Lobos were pretty efficient for the most part. They shot 50% from the field. made a lot of threes. Amzil was really on fire, kind of made a big difference, especially filling in for Mashburn's points, just from a more efficient perspective in that realm. But I thought the Lobos played a gritty game. They struggled a little bit offensively there in the second half. I think the turnovers was probably the difference, and just some uncharacteristic stuff that Donovan Dent, House, trying to get into the lane, trying to get the bigs the ball, just weren't real careful with some passes that came up with some empty possessions, and that was ultimately the difference in the game to me, I thought. But not having Mash out there, Patino alluded to it in his post game presser with Jeff Grammer, um, that when you're down a guard like that, more falls on the shoulders of House and Donovan Dent to be creators. And I felt like they pressed a little bit, not necessarily so much on Dent, but House. And he had 3 or 4 big turnovers there in the second half where they had a 6 point lead. They had back to back or 3 straight possessions where there were two turnovers and a forced shot, and that ended up turning into like a 9 point swing. Utah State ended up taking the lead. And to me, the Lobos never really recovered from that. They did kind of claw away and end up taking the lead once more, but it just, man, they didn't really give themselves the opportunity to capitalize on having that lead and really running away with it. But overall, I thought it was a good game. Really exciting back and forth game, high level basketball. But yeah, the Lobos are still squarely on the bubble, and I'm not feeling as confident about it today as I was yesterday before the game started. But I'm sure everyone else kind of has some thoughts around that too.
I'm gonna go to Rick and his thoughts on the game. You had said UNM defense was undisciplined. They fell for a lot of pump fakes, taking risks for steals. But then Eric and Ed mentioned that they shot the ball well, but your point was that their defense, and it seemed like Utah State couldn't get a stop either. But Rick, your thoughts on the defensive effort, just not for UNM, but for Utah State.
I got to start with the free throw because it's still
Sure, sorry.
pissing me off this morning. Any official in any gym across the country this morning at any age level knows the rule. We're not looking at a boom boom play, a foul out of bounds call or something like that. Everyone's staring at the play. Everyone in the gym knows the rule. So if House would have made the follow up, would they have counted it? Would it have been a tie game? Then what would they have done? After the game, the
That's a valid
official
point.
ruling, they just said they all missed it and it was blown dead. Once it's blown dead, there's nothing Patino or anyone can do. So that was the official ruling. But I know that wouldn't have probably changed the outcome, but it's just kind of sad that you have 3 professional referees that can all make that call at the end of the game. And that wasn't the only call they missed during the game. Early in the game, clearly out of bounds on Utah State within the first 7 minutes. They just gave it back to them and then they scored. So that was the only issue I really had with the officiating. UNM put themselves in a hole in both halves going in the bonus early. They are putting Utah State in the bonus early. I think at the 12-minute mark in the first half, UNM already had 7 fouls. So Utah State was shooting free throws the rest of the half. And in the second half, I think they got in the bonus at the 7-minute mark. And it's okay if you're House to gamble and go for steals, but it cannot be every possession. And Ed, I agree with you. On the last play, he got a hand up on Brown's face, but you know what he did right before that? He turned his back on Brown. Oh, you always have to see ball and man. Any coach will teach you that. And he turned his back on his man completely. That split second of turning his back allowed that half an inch to get the shot off. And Brown is a shot maker. We know this, but the possession before that, House comes out to close out Martinez. Martinez just ran straight by him and slammed it in his face. So 2 terrible possessions on defense for House in a row. And talk about Nelly. He played well, but how many inside muffs and misses and putbacks did he miss? The opportunities were everywhere for UNM, and when it came to getting big stops down the stretch, they just weren't interested in really locking in my eyes, and that's what kind of doomed them. Like Eric said, they're up 6 points with maybe 7 minutes left, and from there it was kind of a mess.
remind everybody that this game was 44-39 at the half. Jacob, I'm going to go to you and your thoughts overall. And Shyman didn't really have a set thing because I feel like the referees last night, it's just a mess. But just your thoughts overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot more attention on the offensive end last night than there was the defensive end, and that's just what I saw, kind of from both teams, to be honest with you. It was it was just back and forth. Not much, attention to the defensive end. I I thought that they played well, and like I said in the last podcast, I think they match up with them the best out of any of the top teams in the Mountain West, just because Utah State has their core players, and then their bench kind of lags too, right? And they have the guards to match up against them. Utah State has one big, we have two, so we technically could have the advantage down there, which I thought last night they had the advantage down there again, because they both played pretty decent again. They shot 65% from the field, had a pretty decent game between both of them. But last night was just the attention to detail on the defensive end, and that's what ended up costing them in a game like that. The officials were calling fouls pretty much every time down the court in the last 3 minutes of the game. That's going to come down to the final possession. You can see it from a mile away, because they're just setting it up to where it's, if one team makes it and the other team doesn't, and they get fouled, you go to the line. It's going to be close. So it just came down to the last play of the game where Brown makes the three. And then we have to go to the line, obviously make the first one, miss the second one. I'll be honest with you. I know it's not a play that you expect somebody to know. I think it was a really bad effort from House on that missed free throw. I thought it was a little bit of a selfish play too. Maybe it's just myself, but it looked like he wanted to throw that so hard off the rim for it to come right back to him and lay it up, instead of lofting a big free throw and letting it bounce and letting one of your guys, especially when you have Toppin down there who can rebound and suck up the ball like crazy. Why would you throw it so hard off if that ball would have hit the rim, it would have been at the 3-point line. He might as well have just grabbed it with one hand and threw it at the rim, because that's how hard he shot it. I thought it was a terrible attempt at doing that. So to me, that's also not being prepared for that situation. That could fall on Patino. You've got to have a little bit better of a situation there, and of knowing what you're going to do. They gave him the ball and he threw it instantly. It was not, it wasn't a really good rant. You can't say that there's a great way to run that play, but I thought it was a really bad effort, with a game on the line that could cement you into the tournament. And that's kind of what you do. And then, we've talked about the officials missing that call. I don't know how you miss that. Everybody knows that rule. If it doesn't touch the rim, Utah State takes the ball out and the game continues. I'm not saying it would have changed the outcome of that game, but like Rick said, for three people to miss that, it's kind of careless. And with how with how much the refs influenced that game last night with fouls, for them to miss that call is pretty mind-boggling. But overall, I thought they had every chance to win. So here we go. We find ourselves in the situation we thought we were going to be in, where we're going to have to beat Air Force and then probably win one more game in the Mountain West Conference tournament to cement themselves in. And that's where we find ourselves.
I think a lot has been made about two things. The officiating this year, and that's kind of put an exclamation point on, the second to last Mountain West Conference regular season game of the year. I've said it a million times on this podcast. I've never criticized. I've criticized officiating. It's something that I've never blatantly, like on the record, talked about. It's very inconsistent, and Jacob can probably make the case. It's very inconsistent all around college basketball, but that's the human element. Number two is the coaching. I think it's boiled down to coaching, and I don't know if things were. better. What am I trying? Better coaching. This team isn't sitting at, 22 and 9 and 10 and 8 in the Mountain West Conference. And this is a team that was picked preseason. Not that these matter. Utah State was picked 9th. I also have a soundbite from Danny Sprinkle last night. But they finished 10 and 8, sixth in the Mountain West Conference overall. When you had national media, I mean, proverbially just riding them. Eric, to you.
Just since you're on the topic of officiating, I'm not really one to sit back and criticize either, but I wanted to compare last night's game to the game before that, the night before with Boise State, San Diego State, for anyone that saw that game and how physical it was. The refs just let them play. There were bodies flying all over the place. There were a lot of no calls. They were just letting them handle their business on the court. The UNM Utah State game was complete opposite. There were so many hand check calls called. There was I think Neff or Rick made a mention that there was a whistle almost every time down the floor. The Lobos were in the bonus with 13 or 14 minutes left in the first half. And I don't understand. This is a high level basketball game. There's a lot of emotion into it. There's a lot to play for. And I mean, there's going to be some physical play out there. You just got to let them play through it. Just the inconsistency from the whole regular season with the Mountain West has been criticized not only on this podcast, but everyone else that's kind of talked about it. I think it's pretty obvious. And man, I think it kind of impacted the game a little bit down there with just the Utah State being able to get so many chances at the free throw line. And to me, it's just like you got to let them play, man. That's it. But and then to your second comment, Ryan, about the coaching piece, I'm not one to hear pick what I say against Patino. I thought he might have some adjustments in there, but it also comes down to execution. That one play specifically where House fouled Brown on that three, where he gave him 3 free throws, and that was late in the second half. That was a big time foul, a big time no-no on House's part. But how many times have we seen that this season where he just kind of out of position or just fouling someone at the wrong time, just over aggressive? Patino didn't even want to look at House when he came to the bench. He just sat down, didn't want to look at him. He probably told him a few possessions before that at the dead ball, like, guys, we got to reel it in here. We got to keep things in check. And he almost looked like him, like a kid and like a dad and son, where the son's not following instruction and you just kind of give up and you're frustrated. That's kind of what it looked like. And so it might be a little bit of coaching, but it also might be a little bit more of execution or lack thereof.
I always think of Steve-O and Jackass when they're talking about, you'll see where I'm going with this. When Ryan Dunn decides to shove the toy car up his butt and Steve-O rejects it. And he goes, I don't want my dad to see this because it's not that he's going to be mad at me. He's going to be he's going to be disappointed in me. And there's always that joke, like, you're not mad at me. You're just really disappointed in me. I'm going to go to Jacob real quick here because he had mentioned to me in a text that, God, we sound like a bunch of high school girls, but yeah, in text that Patino didn't look at him. So Eric, thank you for bringing that up. I forgot about that. But Jacob, you had brought that up. You had texted me that last night. You had said that. I just want your initial thoughts because you had said it.
Yeah, it just looked like he was really disappointed in him. And, great point by Eric is you can say things till you're blue in the face. But if they're not doing them, then that's when you get frustrated. I'll be honest with you. I've never really seen Patino this year sit back in his chair and just refuse to look at Buddy because he was so upset with what was going on. But it goes back a little bit to the selfish of kind of, the team and what's took place all year, right? I know we say things are going to happen. We expect them to happen, but you got to learn, right? I mean, you're a senior, you're expected to be a leader of the team. You can't make the bonehead plays time after time after time after time because you ultimately hurt your team in the end, right? And it's unfortunate, but he definitely fouled him. You know what I mean? And he comes over to the bench, looking for affirmation, like, hey, that wasn't a foul. And everybody's like not looking at him, not even acknowledging him. You know, it was a weird situation, but as Eric said, maybe it was mentioned. And, you know, as a player, you have to kind of be aware of the situation, right? The game is being called so tight that you can't close out that recklessly. You've got to know what you're doing there. And I think, you know, those types of plays cost you a game when you just look back at them. You know, there's not one that just cost you the game. It's multiple. But for a team like Utah State, they shot terribly from three in the first half. I think they were 1 for 12.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they started to hit some shots. So that's what was causing those big closeouts at the end. But you've got to be a little more disciplined than to do that, because then you're just giving them a free, 3 points from the free throw line, especially somebody like Brown that can knock them down like that. So yeah, weird situation. But unfortunate for UNM.
Well, that's the key thing there, Neff. The discipline or the lack thereof, because that speaks to what Rick was talking about earlier with if they're trying to dig with the ball going into Osabar, you got to have your eyes on the shooter, the guy that you're guarding, and also the ball and be able to play both. And then when you kind of overcommit to one side, that's just an undisciplined defensive move. And for a fifth-year senior who should be there, who's been in that moment hundreds of times, you just got to know better.
I wanted to weigh in on a couple of things. I think you're right about House, but the officiating. Okay, now I don't want you guys to think I get mad when the officials are talked about. I got to tell you one thing, that before I became an official, when I was a player, I got thrown out of several games. Teased when I was a coach, got teed up. Right? I mean, I thought they were bad. I yelled at them, and then when I became an official, I understood it's a different job. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be held accountable. Eric, you mentioned they need consistency. And I think coaches always say that. I remember the late Brian O'Neill, Joe O'Neill's brother, who passed away from cancer. I love Brian, coached at Cibola, known him for a long time. Ed, I don't mind if you make that call down here, as long as you make the same call down here on RT Gwynn. I can still hear him. Damn, I love Brian. Good man, right? Now, okay, so, but I'm going to tell you one thing, Eric. Different partners, right? Now, I may call with Joe Schmo tomorrow, and I got a different way of calling than he does. I may let a little bit more go. Now, Joe Schmoes is like boom, 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 right? He's on it. And so there's a consistency, or I may have a different way of calling. He has a different way. And that's the inconsistency that people complain about. The other game you talked about with Boise State and San Diego State, some guys would say, hey, man, I used to say up top, if a guy blocked it, let him play, right? Let the big man play. A lot of guys here in Albuquerque, boop, boop. I'm not saying I got every call right. I miss calls. I'm human. Officials are human too. They are. We make mistakes. I promise you one thing. I never try to hose nobody on purpose. Never. Of course I miss calls. So I think that goes to, people get frustrated because there's consistency on this end. As you mentioned, you thought, Eric, against that was a physical game, man. Whew, man, that was a physical game. It was. And they let them play. They let them go through it. You're not going to get, again, you got Joe Schmo or whoever, Billy Smith calls it different. The way it is, that's all I can explain it to you. Because I have a different way of seeing things at contact. I may just say, hey, man, let them go through that. And somebody else, boom, he's on it. Okay, So you have to adjust to your partners, and the crews have to adjust to each other. But last night, and Neff, you mentioned this, and so did you, Rick, that's a rule that everybody knows. Clock stops automatically. The other thing that you said, Neff, in the huddle, what are we saying in the huddle? Because okay, is Coach Patino saying you're going to miss the second one? Don't forget to hit the rim. You got to hit the rim. How are you going to do it? Those things have to be talked about or practiced. I'm thinking that they talked inside the huddle. They had to have talked. What are you going to do on the second free throw? What are you doing? Make sure you hit the rim, right? Make sure you hit the rim. So I don't know if those late game situations were talked about or not. Ryan, to your point, one guy picked the Lobos for the Final Four to begin the year. Okay.
John, don't you want a Fanta? Yeah, John Fanta.
So, they're 22-9. They hadn't won 22 since 2013, 2014. Are we disappointed in where they are? I maybe. I'm happy that I still think that they can win 2 games. Based on last night's game, the way they played, I've still got hope. I'm the eternal optimist, glass half full. Maybe I'm a fool. They got Air Force. I'm glad they have Air Force. I'm real glad. Maybe it's not a good matchup, but my thing is this: they just handed you your behinds a week ago, and you've got a chance to make up for it. You're a better team. Show us why you're better. I'm not scared of that. I want to play them. If I'm UNM, Rick, you'd want to play him, man, right? Eric, you'd want to play him again. I'd want to play him again, man. So I think, you know what, then get another win. They can still do that. The way I saw them play, you mentioned about the undisciplined, Rick. You mentioned turning his back. He's undisciplined anyway. He's undisciplined, man. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. And he drives. And you know what, Eric, you mentioned a point where Patino doesn't look at him. He's throwing up his hands like, damn, what can I say to this dude, man? I've already said don't foul the three-point shooter. He's done it multiple times. At that point there, as a coach, you're like, I've got no words. I've yelled, I've screamed, I've showed him film, I've showed him don't do it. And then House coming to the bench like I didn't get him. It's like, guys would ask me sometimes, is that a foul? I said, yes, it is. I can't even believe you're asking me about that one, because they come at me sometimes. It's, yeah, that was a foul. Yeah, that was. So to your point, Eric, I think Coach Patino has probably had it up to here. He's already said what he had to say. You can't foul three-point shooters. How many times has he done that this year? How many times? And then again, he's going to steal the ball sometimes, and you're like, wow. So it's the good and the bad, and we saw a lot of that last night.
The coaching situation, like, I'm sorry to go back to the 49ers, but I thought I knew the rules. I guess I didn't in playoff football. Like, how do you not practice those scenarios? Like, how were the 49ers not aware of that? And people, continue to take a big fat dump on the Chiefs. I'm just using coaching here as an example. They are in that situation because they are well coached. Like, it's not, I mean, that's just the way I feel about it. And how Patino and how they are not in that situation to know that, I would assume you would go over that once or twice. Like, okay, this is for everybody. I don't care if it's Braden Applehands or Brent Forsling on the bench. I don't care if it's, Nick Foles right before. I don't know why I'm going with that reference, but like, I feel like all of your players should be coached. What's his name? Shane Dumas Sanchez, right? Like, even though we know he's not going to play, he should be coached up on that. I want to get into a few other things, but I'm going to do it anyway, since very quickly, me, I'm very excited that they get to play Air Force again, because I get to play this again. So I get to play that for the next like 72 hours. And they serve our country. So don't, like, booing them. It just drives me bonkers. It's like the only three teams you can't boo unless you're at West Point or in Annapolis. Like, they're your rival. Like, go right ahead, and you're serving your country. But anyway, Neff, you brought it up, and I'm not wearing the hat, but free throw shooting for the game. And I saw a lot of it yesterday. And there's a team that I'm very high on, the Auburn Tigers. They did so many boneheaded things yesterday, because I had money on the game. But like, I'm thinking they're not in terms of my bet. I'm thinking in terms of like, this is a very talented team, but here's a flagrant run. Here's a bad pass. Yeah, you're up 10-12. And then they were like 11 of like 20 something for free throws. And I was like, you're not going to get very far. I think the SEC tournament's usually in Nashville. I think that once they had it in Tampa, but if you're in Nashville this week and you are close and you're shooting that free throw percentage in this month at this time, you're really screwed. Like, it's simple to me. But UNM free throws, 11 of 18 for 61%. Jacob, you brought that up. I wholeheartedly agree. That's the demise, and not super great for Utah State, 21 of 28, but that's still 75%. That's better than 61%. And I'm sure the three basketball players will chime in. It's been like officiating. It's like it's the Temptations. It's the same old song and dance we've talked about this year. It's free throw shooting and officiating. But you brought it up in the pre-show notes, so I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, they got 10 less free throws than Utah State, but they also made 10 less, right? And just looking at little situations like that down the stretch, I mean, that's what can cost you a game. I mean, if you shoot efficiently from the line, even if you go 15 or 14 for 18, you're looking at overtime or a tied game, right? And at that moment in games when you're shooting a foul shot and you miss it, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but in the end, it could come back to haunt you. And in a game like last night where, you know, the fouls were raining down in the last 3 minutes, you've got to step up and make your free throws and seal a game. And, you know, you can't shoot 65% from the line and expect to win a game too, especially in a game where there is a lot of whistles and a lot of opportunities to shoot free throws. So, you know, it was last night, you know, the two things that the Lobos have been very inconsistent with all year: free throws and 3-pointers. And last night, besides Amzil, nobody could hit a shot from three. And it was, you know, it's been up and down with the free throw line. It's the bigs have been missing, or then we have a game where like Dent goes 1 for 5 or 1 for 6 or whatever it is. You know, it's just been really inconsistent. And you've got to make those free throws to separate yourself during the game or close it out. And they become really, really important at this time of the year. And if you're only shooting 65%, you're going to find yourself in a lot of games and a lot of crunch time situations because of those missed points.
Does anybody else have anything to chime in on that?
Well, from the 3-point shooting perspective, I thought Baker did a decent job. He was 2 of 5 for 2 threes, and those threes actually came at really important times in the game. I think one actually tied the game, and one actually cut a lead to like 1 or 2. So, something that you would kind of expect from Baker in those types of situations. It just I didn't think he got enough shot attempts, 5 shot attempts. He saw 30 plus minutes started. But yeah, that's my 2 cents that I wanted to add on to what Neff was just saying. Didn't want it to go unforeseen.
Jamal Baker, I thought, as I previously mentioned, would be the X factor on this team. He shot 39% from three, and on the season he was 35 of 89. And I thought he had kind of disappeared towards the end. Not going to say a total disappointment, but I think those 2 threes yesterday were big. I don't know if we've given Amzil enough praise. If we can, you guys can stop me because I kind of produced the show at the time. I thought he did a fantastic job, and I don't mean to bounce around. It's just the chaos I think of last night, and you know the gauntlet of death, as I call this conference the last 2 years, and what was the playoff motto for the Diamondbacks last year? Jacob, was, if you might remember this, was it like embrace the chaos or something? Like that's how I feel the Mountain West is you just have to embrace this chaos. And I one thing, I love the conference as a whole, and we'll get into the bracket a little bit. We will have a breakdown. We are gonna break down the show. Break down the show. We're gonna break down the tournament. I asked Coach Tom Moser to join us. He's been traveling, so he said he would probably find time for us later. But this is what he had to say last night, and it's on his Twitter at Coach Moser. Quote the tweet. As for the last play, I do not understand what happened. I am not sure how 3 officials could miss that. I will say it's possible only one is watching the ball and the other 2 are watching the action in the lane. Either way, it's inexcusable. Lobo fans have a right to be upset because it was an incomplete end to the game. Likely would not have changed the outcome, but that's a little consolation. Watching it, I almost wondered if I missed a rule change. That's, you know, now that he say that, I kind of thought that, not trying to bounce around, but, and another key factor is UNM out rebounded Utah State 36-29. If you would have told me that, I would have been like, well, they probably won the game. I didn't give my full thoughts, you know, on the game and the season, and maybe I'll get your guys' thoughts on the season. God, I can't talk. Suffering thuckatash. I thought it was an exciting college basketball game. I thought Boise State and San Diego State were phenomenal. There's a gentleman I think that I follow that Neff and I follow on Twitter. He's a capper, but Jeff Rosa, and he had tweeted out something along the lines of Boise State might be the most underrated team in the country because all they do is win. And I think that while their non-conference wasn't as tough, it was tougher than I think UNM's. I think it helped shape them taking punches in November, taking punches over Thanksgiving, and getting hit in the face in December, because they went into San Diego State and beat them. So kudos to them. I thought this conference was incredibly exciting to watch. I'm excited for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Um, I don't know. People argue. I don't know. College basketball doesn't disappoint to me. I really really enjoy it. Um, much like anything, could things be better? Yeah. As far as this game and the season go, I would just like to say they did play well last night. They are a tough out. Doesn't mean you're going to beat them just because you say a tough out. Like it's not going to be easy. I think this team is very, very beatable, and we've seen it. And I think losing, what was it? Should have had that up, but you lose what, 3 of your last 5 at home. Bringing up the schedule right now, but you drop. They beat Nevada after they beat Nevada in the the NFL conference championship Sundays. They lost to Boise State at home. They beat Wyoming on the road. Lost to UNLV at home, beat Nevada, which might be their only saving grace. And Nevada looks phenomenal. And I'll let Jacob and one of you guys get into that if because they've looked good. They lost to San Diego State on the road. They survived Colorado State. Then they lost to Air Force. Boise State beat Fresno State and lost to Utah State. That is 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 3 and 5 in your last 8. I think the committee shuns upon that. They were already on the bubble. Air Force and UNLV. I think UNLV is okay. They had injuries. Like I know they lost to Southern. They also beat Creighton. They're just as talented, if not anybody in the conference. I think that down the stretch, they did not play well. I think this is a hunch. This is not fact. I think there are some eternal things. There have been things that have been floated around on the interwebs, on Twitter, on X, that Pitino is allegedly, keyword allegedly, leaving. I have heard in talks allegedly that UCF and DePaul are in there. I'm wondering if there are off the court distractions. I will say this, and I might go to Ed after this because I told him this. This team, and we might have been guilty of it, this team was overhyped, overrated, because you do not lose to Air Force at home. I don't care. I mean, I looked at that Final Four that John Fanta picked: Michigan State, Arkansas, I think Creighton, and UNM. Arkansas is not in the tournament. Michigan State's on the bubble. I mean, I get you have to play the season. Then he picked UNM. John Rothstein is continuing. These guys are continually high on them. Again, and that's fantastic. John Rothstein sits on 57th and 10th in Manhattan. He's not here in Albuquerque. I think last night with Pitino sitting on the bench, when have you ever seen that? But I'm going to say it again. I think this team was overhyped and overrated. And I think down the stretch, when they got cocky after savagely beating Utah State and San Diego State in January at home, we knew the schedule that lied ahead. I think it's a massive disappointment. I don't understand where the depth was. We had a Quentin Webb sighting last night. I'm sure Ed and Eric were happy about that. I thought we were going to get a lot more of Isaac Mushila, who has been a proven winner, granted at a lower level, but still was in conference tournaments. Still in the NCAA tournament, saw time, was key valued. Member of Texas A&M Corpus Christi last year. I think unless something is salvaged this week, I think that this is a massive failure. This is not Cal State Fullerton, Ed. This is not Harvard. but I think it sits right up there with the expectations that this team had. I don't know if anybody wants to counter argue my rambling there that was incoherent, and may God have mercy on your guys' souls. And to quote another Adam Sandler movie while I finish that rant, Jacob and I hope Rick appreciate this.
Oh, well, better luck next year.
Ed, to you. I think you look like you wanted to say.
Yeah, look, a lot of things you said are true. Maybe I think I said I was pretty hyped up with what some of the transfers that we knew were coming in. To Mashila, when Hunter Green told me this a couple months ago, he said, "Hey, I don't think Coach Pitino's high on him. He's 6'4", and Hunter's right there at practice. Hunter knows." And I thought, okay, I was hoping to see more of him, and he scored 15 and 16 in an NCAA game, 15 points, 16 or maybe 16 points, 15 rebounds. I'm like, hey, man, this guy could help us out. He started playing early in the year, and then we didn't see him. Quinn Webb, we talked to him this summer, Ryan, and we were pretty excited about him. He said, hey, I'll do anything. I'll play a 4. I'll play a 3. I'll do whatever it takes. He was lifting weights. I thought we'd see more of him. We didn't. So, is it along the lines of Cal State Fullerton, which I was alive for and pierced my heart, my worst Lobo loss as a fan ever? No, it's not on that. Is it on the lines of Harvard? No, not yet, because they've still got time to salvage the season. Now, they were – a lot of people talk about them real on the CBS and FS1 broadcast. They still talk about them. Hey, it's one of the better teams in the country. They should be in, things like that. So they still have – I still think they can do some damage in the tournament. Based on what they did last night, if they play like that, they have a chance to win. They still have a chance. Those other losses were final. Cal State Fullerton was the end of the season. Harvard, the end of the season. There was no coming back from that. You still got chances here. You've got a tournament. You can still win. You can do some damage here and erase everything that people are saying about you at the end of the year now. So I don't look at it like that. No, not even close. Fullerton killed me because we had tickets to the pit here. The regionals were going to be at the pit, man. They weren't going to lose here. That loss there was, you guys have no idea. I was 15 years old, and that was, one of the most depressing losses I've been, not even close. The Harvard loss was very, very depressing. They're a 3 seed, and Charles Barkley had mentioned them as the Final Four maybe. That was very, very hard to take. But this season here, I don't see it like that. But here, one real quick thing, and I'll turn it over to someone else. If Pitino leaves, and it's been alleged that he might, I look at Utah State and Danny Sprinkle. I'm like, hey, man, they rebuild quick. Now, could that happen here? I hope that doesn't happen, that he doesn't leave and we don't lose certain players. But what Danny Sprinkle has done at Utah State's amazing. So in this new era of college athletics with the NIL, and there is hope in the portals. Of course, I don't want Coach Pitino to leave. I'd like him to stay and keep building. But I think if that did happen, you never know what could happen. But I wouldn't want to go there. But right now, they still have a chance to salvage this season. So I'm not going to look at it like a massive disappointment. Not yet.
I will let somebody take the floor. I wanted after this, because I wanted to play Danny Sprinkle. This is courtesy of Utah State University athletic department. And I liked what he had to say here. We had the privilege of talking to him, and I remember sitting in front of him. I feel really bad. I'm thinking like, man, this guy's got the biggest test because they just lost everybody. No assists, no points. And he mentions it here. And he's definitely the conference coach of the year. He's going to be a finalist for coach of the year. I think his time in Logan is a month. But here he is last night after the game, and somebody posted on Twitter, man, he balled out his time at Montana State. So he's a good coach, and he's fairly young. Here we go.
Like this team, I don't know how to describe them. Like I really don't. Like what they've done. This will never be done in Division I basketball again. Literally, you don't return point assists, all that, like, and to win a Mountain West championship, like not at this level, like not at the Power 6 level. What these guys have done and how they've come together and just selfless and like caring for each other, loving it, and it's real. Like you can see, you don't do what they did if they don't truly care about each other.
I thought that was really cool. Neff, Rick, Eric, anybody have thoughts on counterpoint me as we John Stewart and Tucker Carlson crossfire? Does anybody have a rebuttal or maybe agree with me?
Go ahead, Rick.
Just talking about Sprinkle really quick. I think you could see what he instills in his players on the court, the composure that their players had down the stretch of the game last night. They're all waiting for the perfect time to attack. They're never rushed on offense. They did have turnovers, but if you look at Martinez, he took his time, drove to the hoop. Falsalev had a layup down the stretch, and Brown has just been their leader all year. And to my eyes, his Brown's stats might not be as gaudy as Ledie's, but based on the shots he made, he has the right to talk about Conference Player of the Year too, even though his stats might not be at the same level. But he affected so many wins this year, so I think that's the difference between the Lobos and Utah State is the Lobos have just as much talent, or if more, and that's why we had these high expectations, but it never really all gelled together. And we talked about it since the time Mash came back from his injury a couple months ago. Well, how are they going to make it all work? And they never really did, except for that stretch of those 3 games at home, or those couple 4 or 5 game win streaks. Since that point, I don't know if it's due to whatever mental health issues are going around the team. Maybe that had a part in kind of the change that we saw, but it just seems like they were never mentally as strong as some of these other teams in the conference and able to keep their composure instead of getting in these helter-skelter moments. And they're lucky to win a handful of games where Dent made those crucial game-winning plays. They might have 3 or 4 more losses on their resume, but they've also lost a few games at the buzzer, so I think it could have gone either way. I still see the season as a success, though, because just based on where they're coming from and all the pieces they had to fit together, I think they can beat Air Force and will give Boise State a good run, but they'll definitely need to win that to get into the big dance. So I don't see it as over, as Ed said, and I don't see it as a failure yet at this point.
I have to agree with both Rick and Ed. There's still a lot to play for, and no, I don't think it's time to measure up the season on if it's a failure or if it was a major success or not yet. But it's going to come down to a disciplined team executing at a high level, especially in those situations that they need to be able to execute. And that's something that Utah State flexed on UNM last night, was just their overall composure, their discipline, being able to stay in a close game. They could have easily folded going down 6, but they weren't going to do that. They continued to execute at a really high level. They played for each other. They each specific player doesn't really jump out on you on paper as like this freak athlete, freak talent, maybe other than like Osabar does. But Darius Brown definitely deserves to be in the conversation of player of the year, just as his ability to kind of, from a high level of basketball IQ and understanding the game and finding open spots and getting the ball to the player that can actually fill the bucket, right? And just kind of controlling the whole game. That's something that the Lobos don't necessarily have outside of Dent. I think House and Mashburn are good in their own set of talents, but as far as making everyone else on the floor better and making this team kind of like uplifting them, I don't think they're on that level. So it's nothing against those players. I'm just saying that Utah State just has those type of dudes that are able to win night in and night out on a high level, which is the Mountain West. I mean, I don't think, what was it, 20 something and 5, which is their regular season record. I don't think that's a mistake. I think it was just underestimated by a lot of the basketball experts out there that voted and counted out Utah State in the long run. But um, looking forward, I think the Lobos still have a lot to play for. We've seen a lot of flashes of this team being able to play at a high level, and when they're running and gunning and they're sharing the ball and shots are going down, this team's is as exciting as anyone in the whole country. But it comes down to being able to execute, being able to stay disciplined, having that composure on the defensive end to everyone to be locked in and kind of taking care of each other. I think we've seen that kind of unravel a little bit towards the end of the season, but now's the time and their chance to kind of regroup, pull things together, and make a run in this tournament. I don't think it's impossible. They need to handle Air Force. Beating one team 3 times in a season is extremely difficult. Lobos need to make some adjustments in that second round if they were to get there and take care of business against Boise State. If they can do that, then I think they're definitely in the Mountain West tournament in the national conversation for like making the big dance. But it's going to come down to them executing, and still a lot to play for.
Jacob, I'm going to go to you here in a second, but I saw this tweet this morning. We had the gentleman from Aztec breakdown on because my best friend, Lobo Gabe, tweeted out, I actually like this side of the bracket. Hopefully beat Air Force, then Boise State, which beating a team 3 times is very difficult, i.e. the 2007 Dallas Cowboys. But I always have to throw that in there. But Aztec Breakdown tweeted out, by my calculation, since 2017, Mountain West teams that are 2-0 against an opponent in the conference tourney are 28-8 in that third game. The quote, beating a team 3 times narrative is pushed by the media, has no teeth behind it. I thought that was fascinating. Jacob, your thoughts, I think, on bracketology, just where UNM sits. You're keen on it, and jokingly, you're in your Bristol bracket bunker, which is in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yeah, it's tough. I think they're going to need to beat. I think they have to beat Boise, and the reason why is because there is going to be teams that come out of these conference tournaments that you don't expect to win. And they're going to steal bids and they're going to push teams out. It happens every year. And when you find yourself on the last 4 bubble before conference tournament comes in, you have to play seemingly flawless basketball to impress the committee to get past that line. A win over Air Force is not going to do that. So it's going to be a win over Boise State. As we've said, Boise State's one of those teams that they just know how to win. It takes whatever it takes. It's not, sometimes you've got Max Rice that shows up. Sometimes you got Dagenhart, you got Stanley. They can do it from multiple angles, and they're going to have to figure out a way to beat them. Just going back to kind of what you guys were talking about before the bracketology thing, we're starting to see a transformation in college basketball of these smaller schools having premier talent that people don't see before anything. Dalton Connect is one at Tennessee. He is
the man.
He played at Northern Colorado, and the guy was absolutely deadly at Northern Colorado, but he wasn't even at the level that he's at this year. He averaged like 18 points, 19 points at Northern Colorado. The guy's putting up 40 a night in the SEC lately. It's ridiculous. Then you look at somebody like Brown, Darius Brown, that comes over from Montana State, Osabar, who comes over. These guys are hungry to show that they can win in a different conference. That's what we're seeing. Ian Martinez not really getting a chance at Maryland. These guys are coming in hungry, and it doesn't really matter what people think before the season starts, right? And that could be the difference between a team like UNM, where there's major expectations, and you think you're good, and you end up, getting shown that sometimes the will to win is more than just the talent that you possess, right? And I think that could be a potential of that. I won't say that the season's definitely I won't say that it's a disappointment yet. I mean, a failure, but I will say it's a disappointment to me. I feel like this team should be safely in the tournament. I don't feel like we should have to be playing for our lives right now, because this is the most talented team that we've seen probably since Alfred left. And I think that this team deserved to make the NCAA tournament with how much talent they've had. But for that to happen, it's going to take wins now, and I don't feel like they should be in that situation, but they are.
I didn't see this. Just a few notes before we wrap up here. Jeff Grammer tweeted this 13 hours ago. Official statement for lead official Mike Littlewood. I think he meant from Mike Littlewood. Quote, we did not notice on the court that the ball did not hit the rim, so we let the play until the game clock expired. So there you go. Ed, to your point, in the first round last year, Nate Oates, Alabama, against Texas A&M Corpus Christi in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Alabama was the number 1 overall seed. Isaac Mushila was 6 of 17, hit a 3, 15 rebounds, 1 assist, 16 points. As far as bracketology goes, Lenardi's not updated, but he had UNM as the last 4 in, and they would play Villanova in Dayton. And Rick, if this happens, you know who we have to call. Jerry Palm, as of 9:02 Eastern time this morning, New Mexico is the first 4 against Seton Hall. Our friend Tim Chavez went there. It's in North Jersey. It's a nice campus. So we would have to get him on the show if that somehow happens. He and his friends are he and his fellow Seton Hall alumni are awesome. I'm doing a lot of adding here. I was looking for Mike DeCourcy. He has them as an 11 seed, UNM as an 11 seed, with a bye. His lines are St. John's versus Colorado and Virginia towards Providence, and this was updated yesterday early afternoon East Coast time, 1:15 East Coast time, so Eastern time. Does anybody else have final thoughts? I wanted to make sure the guys who played basketball thought, and I gave my negative Nelly thoughts. Does anybody have any other thoughts before we get to Snake of the Week?
Just 2 quick things. If Donovan Dent can get to the rim whenever he wants, but if he's going to make the step to the next level of player, he has to get back to some type of mid-range jumper or some type of mid-range shot to mix it up, because there's too many times where he has to shoot an in-between shot or has to get to the rim. If he can level that out, and the first few games he was shooting a mid-range shot from the foul line. He's not a great three-point shooter, has only made maybe 15 on the season. So I think for him to make that next step, he needs some type of mid-range game. And second, hats off to Lady Lobos. They're the number 2 seed in the Mountain West, led by Wilson, who's, like Jacob said, a hungry transfer from Syracuse, wasn't getting many minutes there. She comes to UNM. I don't think she comes out of the game. So great season from her and the Lady Lobos. I think still will need to win the conference tournament to get in, but they had a great season.
I was going to get to that. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, Nia Wilson, she won Mountain West Conference Player of the Week last week. They will play, I wrote it in here, they will play the winner of San Diego State or San Jose State on Monday at 6 p.m. as a two seed. So we might have to keep an eye on that. But yeah, they had a terrific season. And didn't do our justice. We didn't talk that much about them. It is time for Snake of the Week. And I will go first, giving you guys some time to think about it.
And this is a Snake of the Week, bro.
My Snake of the Week, and again, we didn't define what it was. It's just anything you liked or didn't like. I give it to Utah State and Danny Sprinkle for what he did this year. I thought it was quite phenomenal. And then that Darius Brown big, I guess, sign that they had that was on the Aggies mascot body in the student section. And I'm going to get a lot of crap for this. I think Utah State's student section is phenomenal. I'm pretty sure, allegedly, that they started the "I Believe That We Will Win" chant years ago. I remember before they joined the Mountain West, they were dominant in the WAC. Their student section was awesome. I don't get the surgical gloves. I know it was explained. I'm not dogging Utah State. I thought I don't get it. Somebody needs to explain it to me, but I like it. That place looks like a fantastic, the D Glenn Smith Spectrum. Looks like a fantastic game, a fantastic place to see a game. I mean, it's got like, that's not even at least I don't know when they built it, but like in the early 70s, I was looking it up last night. I don't know what Utah State's colors were at that time, but the seats in that place are ugly. I don't know. It sounds like it gets loud in there. It's one of the places. It might be an underrated venue in all of college basketball. I think it's fantastic. My Snake of the Week is to kudos to what he was able to do, and something that I didn't bring up, Neff, and you mentioned it. The four starters were all in double digits. Fastlev had 10. Mason Fastlev. Darius Brown II had 19. Great Osabor 21, and Ian Martinez had 22. They're a lot of fun to watch. They're not deep. That might come back and nip them in the butt. I'm not sure if they're poised for a tournament run. Obviously, their seed can grow. Rick, I will start with you for your snake of the week.
And this is a snake of the week, bro.
Well, speaking of colors, I think you and I would have fit in the crowd there at Utah just great.
Yes.
But my snake of the week is Amzil. I'm a Amzillionaire right now. That guy went unconscious in the first half, really knocking down those shots. And, at the beginning of the season, I couldn't stand him on either end of the court. And I think now he has a case to be maybe the sixth man of the year in the conference with the numbers he put up, even though he went through a tough stretch. So I got Amzil as snake of the week.
Jacob, to you, snake of the week.
This is a snake of the week, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with Utah State. We've talked about it, but it's hard to do what they did. Not returning a point, not returning an assist, not returning any of that stuff is really tough to overcome. And they did it without a lot of bench, like you said. And that team and it still is not very deep. So congrats to them on winning the conference. That's a major achievement because this conference was tough this year, regardless of, what we, how much we say it. There's a reason why all these teams are in the top 40 of the net, and it's because there is good basketball teams in this conference. So for you to go only lose 4 games in your inaugural season for Danny Sprinkle and a lot of these guys that followed him from Montana State and the team that he put together out of the transfer portal, that's tough to do. So mine would be Utah State in their Mountain West Conference season outright championship.
Eric, to you.
And this is a snake of the week, bro.
I'm going to keep it with the Utah State trend there, Neff. My snake of the week is going to Darius Brown. I think he's firmly put himself in conversation for Mountain West Player of the Year. And that big shot that he hit last night to kind of seal the deal would be like the 3rd or 4th time that he's done that in this Mountain West Conference season alone. I think the dude's a baller. Shifty, can get to the rim, high-level shooter, and really just high-level basketball IQ and kind of overall director of that offense. So he'd have to be my snake of the week.
Ed, we go to you. Your snake of the week.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you guys said about Utah State. I think what Danny Sprinkle did there was, gosh, it's amazing. But I'm going to go with what Rick said is as far as Mustafa Amzil, and he had been struggling before last night. And when he hit that first 2, he could tell he was in a zone. And I was really impressed with him getting the ball in the left block and drop stepping, making a nice little power move underneath. We hadn't seen much of that. And they're going to need – look, if they're going to beat Air Force and Boise State, they're going to need him. They're going to need that kind of performance. So he's my snake of the week.
All right. You know what I didn't do at the beginning of the broadcast, and forgive me, I've got somebody working on my yard outside. So if you hear that, I apologize. I made it through this hour and 15 minutes of the podcast. We didn't thank our sponsors, much like the end of the game last night. I messed up like the Mountain West Conference officials. Hey, if you're looking for a place to watch the Lobos when they are on the road, head over to Turquoise Desert Tap Room, only a few minutes away from Santa Ana Star Casino. Obviously on the road if you can't make the trip to Vegas and the UNLV campus. Catch the Lobos, other college basketball games. Conference tournament week is here. March Madness is next week. The NBA, NHL, spring training is in full swing. Opening day is like 2 weeks away. It's in full swing. Stop by for food, drinks, and football. Well, football not right now. Baseball, hockey, basketball. Turquoise Desert Tap Room also serves local brews on tap. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Turquoise Desert Tap Room. I had a real Ron Burgundy moment there. Abrazo Homes is Lobo owned and Lobo operated and a proud supporter of the University of New Mexico Athletic Department and its student athletes. Join the movement and help Abrazo Homes build momentum by contributing to the 505 Sports Venture Foundation. Our friends Drew Harrigan, Kurt Roth over there, or the UNM Lobo Club. When you buy an Abrazo home, you become a part of the Abrazo Familia. Looking to build a perfect home in New Mexico, find them at abrazohomes.com. The tournament, the women's start tomorrow or today. The women will play tomorrow at 6 p.m. or if you're listening to this for continuity reasons, tonight at 6 o'clock. In the next 48 hours, we are going to try to get out a Mountain West Conference tournament preview and maybe break down who we think are players of first team all conference, player of the year, coach of the year, sixth man of the year. I think we kind of all broke it down there, but maybe we'll make it official, as I do air quotes if you're listening on Spotify. I'm going to throw it over to Ed real quick, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. You guys are continuing, you and Nick, your son Nick Nunez, are continuing your road to the pit, a high school New Mexico high school basketball journey today. A unique perspective, and I'm very excited to listen to it. Just very quickly on who you guys are talking to this week leading up to the New Mexico State, the basketball state championships.
We've got an official, Tim Chacon, who was selected to officiate his third state tournament. So I'm looking forward to Timmy and I used to battle back at Johnson Gym back in the day. He was the AA Player of the Year with Penasco back in 1981, state champion there. So looking forward to hearing Tim's perspective on officiating.
And I don't know if Eric has any house cleaning issues to say. I think we're good to go.
We're good.
I ended up with the flu. I was supposed to go to Boise. I ended up with the flu. And then we were supposed to do a pregame show live from Turquoise Desert Tap Room prior to Utah State. Would have been a damn good game to do that. We didn't. We're hoping to be there either for the Mountain West Conference tournament. We'll see what happens, what transpires, or maybe the NCAA tournament. Again, we're going to be coming to you guys hopefully within the next 48 hours with a Mountain West Conference tournament preview and a recap, a little bit of a dive into a recap of the season. On behalf of Eric, you know what I didn't do, as I always don't do. Hey, follow us on Twitter or X at the Pit Press NM. If you're watching on YouTube, it's right there at the bottom of your screen. On Instagram, same thing. It's at the bottom of your screen. Follow us at the Pit Press NM and visit our website. Maybe I'll start writing a little bit more. I've gotten the inch to do that. Visit us at thepitpressnm.com. We're almost done with this, guys, but I've really appreciated our time. It's been a lot of fun. I enjoy doing this. We don't get paid to do this. We take time out of our schedules, and I got sick, so I'm sorry that the coverage kind of, and I also have a full-time job, so I'm kind of sorry that this last week was weird. But on behalf of Eric Moulton, Ed Nunez, Rick Thompson, Jacob Neff, my name is Brian Mori. This is the Pit Press podcast under the New Mexico Alumni Media umbrella. We thank you guys for listening, and we will talk to you soon.